How's it going, Giants fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. We want to discuss Daniel Jones and talk about a couple of statistics and offensive scheme changes that the Giants are probably going to implement this year to manufacture more production for Jones in the final year of his deal, really. This is going to be an interesting situation. They declined his fifth-year option. As we know, Daniel Jones is not kind of established as a franchise quarterback in the NFL. He's far from that right now. We need to see more, and we're all rooting for him. A lot of people have their opinions and whatnot, but we kind of just want to dive into some stats specifically about how the offense is going to change and where Daniel Jones can really extrapolate on his strengths, right? They're asking him, what are you comfortable with? What do you like? Mike Kafka, Brian Dable, really trying to figure out what he likes to do on the football field. Kafka, gave us some indications the other day that he likes to be able to have control at the line of scrimmage. He likes to have knowledge before the snap is called, which means we're going to see a lot more pre-snap motion. We're going to see a lot more maybe audibles and him making decisions and having the freedom to attack and be aggressive. Because at this point in time, let it loose. Let DJ be as aggressive as he wants because this is his chance to shine. And if he has learned anything from the past 3 years, it should be how to be really conservative. And I think that being conservative has held this offense back tremendously. And I want to talk about some ways where the Giants can manufacture production for him and not put him in a spot where he has to make risky decisions, run the football, dive headfirst into tackles, take shots that are unnecessary, play smart football and take calculated risks. That's how I want Daniel Jones to operate moving forward. But Anthony, before we dive into these interesting stats, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I've been a huge proponent of pushing the ball downfield, utilizing Daniel Jones's deep throwing accuracy, because he's always been really accurate throwing the ball downfield. He just barely ever does it. I think when you take a look at, his deep passes in his rookie season to the sophomore season to the third season, it's gone down every single year. He's not taking deep shots downfield. Every coach just comes in and they're like, all right, we need to rein Daniel Jones in. And I think the reason why is because he's commits so many turnovers. He's had some really bad interceptions. He's had some horrible fumbles. But if you take a look at the statistics, almost none of his interceptions have come when throwing the ball downfield. I think he threw the one Hail Mary type throw against the Saints this past year, which was who cares? But I don't think there's really been any deep passes that have been intercepted by Daniel Jones. When he's throwing the ball downfield, it is efficient. He's not throwing turnover-worthy plays. In fact, I was reading an article from Pro Football Focus where they were saying, I think he ranked around 15th in the NFL in quarterbacks in terms of throwing the ball downfield this past season. And they were like, well, he didn't complete a lot of his deep passes and he barely threw any, but he had 0 turnover-worthy throws when throwing downfield, which is super rare for a quarterback to be pushing the ball 20 plus yards downfield over the course of an entire season and not throwing a pass that's turnover worthy, because they don't count the Hail Mary at the end of the half as a turnover worthy throw, because that's really all you can do is just throw the ball deep and pray. That's what a Hail Mary is. But with Daniel Jones, you take a look at what he's done on a year-to-year basis. He is a very conservative quarterback. And one of the ways that you get a conservative quarterback to start playing a little bit more efficiently is you rein them in and you have them throw short. You have them throw near the line of scrimmage. You manufacture plays for them, as you just mentioned, Alex. You have them throw a lot of screen passes, a couple bubble screens. RPOs are great for a conservative quarterback that doesn't like to throw the ball downfield, because you can kind of just read the defense quickly and make a play. And I think all that kind of stuff is the kind of scheme stuff that we're going to see Brian Dable and Mike Kafka implement. More RPOs, more screens, more jet sweeps and motion, all that stuff that's really going to simplify things pre-snap for Daniel Jones, because he'll already know this is the coverage and this is the look that I want and here's the throw that I'm going to make, and he can kind of just telegraph that before the play even begins, which I think is going to be super beneficial for him. As everyone knows, if you've been listening to this podcast, I'm super excited for the upcoming season in terms of what the offense is going to look like with Daniel Jones. I love this coaching staff that they built, and I'm really excited to see if we get a more aggressive Daniel Jones as well, but also the stat that we're going to discuss, how it's going to make Daniel Jones a super efficient quarterback in this offensive system.
Right. And you know what I want Daniel Jones to be? I want him to be a smart quarterback. I don't want him to have to feel like he has to carry the load for an offense that is really just struggling altogether. Last year we've seen him, he even said, I've been trying to make plays, trying to make things happen when we weren't really in flow, not doing as well. And this offense is going to give him easy production. And I love that. You look at Patrick Mahomes, the guy just, all he does is dump it off to Tyreek Hill, dumps it off to McCole Harmon, dumps it off to whoever it is that is capable of taking it 90 yards without him even doing a single thing. That's all it takes. You know what I mean? Look at the Bills. Give it to Isaiah McKenzie. Give it to Gabriel Davis. Give it to, I don't know, Devin Singletary or Zach Moss or Stephon Diggs, and let them do the work for you. Why do you always have to rely on threading the needle, throwing the ball deep, taking unnecessary risks? You can devise an offense that generates production without being idiotic. And I think Jason Garrett tried to be too idiotic at times. And the scheme was just so predictable. Now, this is the couple stats that I want to throw out there in terms of what the Bills and Chiefs did for Allen and Mahomes and the production they got from doing basically nothing. All they had to do was throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and I'll tell you how much production they generated and how much production Daniel Jones generated. Obviously, good blocking is going to help. Daniel Bellinger is going to help at the second level. Evan Neal with his massive frame, help at the second level. Mark Lewinsky, we're going to see a ton of second level blocking from these guys, plowing the way, dominating in the trenches as blockers, run blockers, and screen blockers. That is where we're going to see a lot of success, I think, this upcoming season. I think that those long developing route concepts, it's going to be a little early for them to hold it down. There's not much chemistry there. They're still dealing with some injuries. Andrew Thomas, the left tackle, has missed some time. He doesn't have any chemistry with the left guard position just yet, but I know he can hold it down on an island. But I do want to discuss a couple stats. And the first one is Daniel Jones throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. So last season, he had a 93.9% completion rate when throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. He completed 46 completions over 49 attempts. So he was pretty much impeccable when doing that. Now, the problem is he only generated 204 yards of action. Why? Because the blocking out in front was awful and the playmakers were always injured. So now let's look at Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen had a 90% completion rate, 90 completions there, 479 yards, and 3 touchdown passes. When throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Daniel Jones didn't have a single touchdown pass, if I didn't say that before. Mahomes, on the other hand, and you're thinking Mike Kafka and this West Coast style offense, and their entire mantra, get our playmakers into space and let them work. Get blockers out in front and let the guys work. Patrick Mahomes had 151 completions behind the line of scrimmage. He didn't even have to throw the ball forward to generate 1,051 yards and 7 touchdown passes. He had almost more touchdown passes than Daniel Jones, who had 10 last year in total. He almost had more touchdowns last year throwing the ball backward. Do you have any idea how freaking ridiculous that is for a quarterback to have more touchdowns than another starter throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage? That is called manufactured production. That is called, you don't have to force your quarterback to make excessive plays, go headfirst into Philadelphia Eagle defenders and miss the rest of the season, get destroyed by Dallas defenders on the goal line, be spitting out freaking turf from your mouth like you have rabies. It's not necessary. You can have your playmakers do the work for you and keep your quarterback safe, hanging out, having a beer in the backfield, letting the guys that are supposed to be blocking and making plays in the open field do the work for you. That is how I see this offensive scheme capitalizing on Daniel Jones' strengths. Now, we know he's an accurate downfield passer. We know he's a very good quarterback when it comes to arm talent. I wouldn't say he's very good, but I say he's adequate, right? He's an adequate passer. Is he a great quarterback? No, not by any means. Does he have the potential to be good? Absolutely. The thing is, he's been screwed over time and time again. Worst offensive line, 3 consecutive years. 3 of the worst pass blocking offensive lines, 3 consecutive years. Saquon Barkley injured, his star running back out for most of the time. His playmakers, Kadarius Toney, Kenny Golladay, always injured. The guy's been throwing a freaking Colin Johnsons out there and CJ Boards. We need these guys to be healthy for once. Wan'Dale Robinson has a proven history of health, knock on wood. I think that looking at these stats and what they're capable of doing in the open field, Wan'Dale Robinson, by the way, fits this mold perfectly of what I'm talking about right now. Short completions, screens behind the line of scrimmage, let him work, let him do stuff in the open field. That is why they went out and got Wan'Dale Robinson, who ranked, I believe, 6th in college football in forced missed tackles this past collegiate season. And he's also a dominant receiver going downfield. He doesn't have the biggest radius, but he's so shifty, he's so small. He's capable of generating a lot of yardage without actually having to do forcing Daniel Jones to do all the work. So, Anthony, when you're hearing these stats and how amazing Patrick Mahomes is without even doing anything, literally just shoveling the ball off, literally throwing it behind him, how does this make you feel about the scheme moving forward?
Listen, Patrick Mahomes is an otherworldly talent, a quarterback that the NFL has never seen before. He has arguably the strongest arm that the game has ever seen, and he has deep accuracy that it's rare to see. Only a few quarterbacks in the past 20 years have been able to pinpoint throws downfield the way that Patrick Mahomes does. But one of the things that Patrick Mahomes has really benefited from is an incredible coaching staff that knows exactly how to get the most out of him. Andy Reid is an offensive genius, and Mike Kafka was, in a way, sort of his protege, right? Like he had a lot of say in that. He had a lot of development in Patrick Mahomes. If you read any quote from Patrick Mahomes about Mike Kafka, it's just praise and praise, saying, I would not be the quarterback that I am today if not for my quarterback's coach, Mike Kafka. And now Mike Kafka with the New York Giants is going to be taking a lot of those Andy Reid, play calls where they're in the red zone. Usually in the red zone, you see like those basic minded offensive coaches just throw a fade pass into the back corner of the end zone, right? And then that succeeds maybe 30% of the time. But with Andy Reid, you'll see just a crazy schemed up jet sweep that gets Tyreek Hill a walk-in touchdown, or, a shovel pass to Travis Kelce where he runs behind the right guard and just plows in for a touchdown. It's just genius, like next level thinking and coordination from Andy Reid, Mike Kafka, Eric Bieniemy. It's really, really smart offensive stuff. And it's stuff that, yes, it does definitely inflate Patrick Mahomes' stats, because when you take a look at all the touchdowns that he throws, many of them are downfield and they are plays that he made on his own. But also many of them are just backwards passes that a receiver or running back takes to the house. There's a lot of manufactured statistics in Patrick Mahomes' game, and that's not to slight Patrick Mahomes. That's only to praise Mike Kafka, Eric Bieniemy, and Andy Reid, arguably the best coaching staff or offensively in the NFL for the past 3 years. Of course, it's broken up a little bit now that the Giants have poached Mike Kafka to be their new offensive coordinator, something we're all super excited about. But when you take a look at statistically, Daniel Jones has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, I think that he's been playing a lot better than his statistics suggest, because, there's not a high touchdown total, but there's a lot of plays where he'll throw it downfield and the receiver catches it and then falls to like the 2-yard line. And then they handed it off to Wayne Gallman a bunch in 2020. And that's how they got a bunch of touchdowns, right? But Daniel Jones was making the plays to get them downfield. It just wasn't turning into touchdowns on the stat sheet. Now, if he was playing in a different offensive scheme, on the goal line, they're probably not just plunging it to Wayne Gallman 3 downs in a row until he finally stumbles his way into the end zone. If he's playing for the Chiefs, they're probably throwing a quick shovel pass, or a screen pass out wide, and they're getting a touchdown where, it's a 3-yard pass, but it goes down as a passing touchdown for Daniel Jones. And that's kind of just the difference in production by scheme. And the Giants, just the past couple of years, have not had a scheme that's very quarterback friendly on your fantasy team, because it doesn't generate a lot of passing touchdowns. But now you're talking about the two like offensive coordinators that generate probably the most passing touchdowns, with Brian Dable and Mike Kafka. So I think you're going to see probably a lot more deep passes. I think, I keep harping on it. Daniel Jones is a very efficient deep passer, but he's also just generally a very smart quarterback. And now that he's going to be trusted to make all these short little screen passes, bubble screens, and these RPOs, I can't stress enough how important the RPOs are for a smart quarterback like Daniel Jones. You're going to see an increase in statistical production, and you're going to see a lot of touchdowns that are just very easy for Daniel Jones. Just short 2-yard pass that Saquon Barkley takes down the right sideline and scores a touchdown on. And that's really all he needs to do. Just be the commander in the offense. Just kind of let things flow, listen to the calls that the coaches are giving you, and make the throws necessary. You don't have to do too much in an offense that's so smart that it just puts playmakers in position to catch the ball, turn upfield, and walk into the end zone.
You want to hear my hot take of this episode?
I'd love to hear it.
Wan'Dale Robinson is going to lead the Giants receivers in touchdowns this year.
I absolutely disagree with you, but that's why it's a hot take. Listen, if that happens, that would be really shocking to me. But I think, when you look at what they have with Kenny Golladay, he's going to get some deep targets that I think are going to turn into touchdowns this year. And I think he's also going to get a couple goal line fades. And then Kadarius Toney is the one that I think really falls in line with this offensive scheme that we're talking about with the RPOs. Kadarius Toney has the ability to take a slant to the house like there hasn't been a receiver that's had that ability since Odell Beckham Jr. on the Giants. Just take a quick slant route and house it. Kadarius Toney has that ability, and you could argue that Wan'Dale Robinson also has that ability, but I just think Kadarius Toney is the one who's going to be playing that role a little bit more, consistently for the Giants, because I think Wan'Dale, I think in the red zone, what you're talking about, screen passes, Wan'Dale is going to get that, but 45 yards out, Kadarius Toney will take a slant route to the house, and I think that's where he kind of has the edge in terms of touchdown scoring ability.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kadarius lacks OBJ's top end speed, like when he was taking those slants to the house. But I think that Wandale is just going to be available. I think Kadarius is going to miss games this year. Like he did last year, and I'm not going to say like he's definitely going to miss games this upcoming season, but I will say that I just kind of get the sense that Wandale's going to be more reliable, and I think that because of that, he's going to get more targets and more touchdowns. But I get your point. I totally understand like where you're coming from in terms of like Wandale's going to be more of like that like red zone option. But that's my hot take. I'm really curious to see how they these touchdowns really get spread around to the offense, honestly, because it is interesting. Like, where does Kenny Galladay fit in right now? Like, he's that big possession receiver. Are they going to just throw fades to him? Like, how are they going to get him involved in the red zone? Like, you look at Buffalo, like I wonder if he plays that Gabe Davis role, like a bigger receiver. Or like, because you look at like the Chiefs, they don't have any receivers like Kenny Galladay. They don't
Right.
use guys like him. So I am curious to see like how Kenny Galladay like is schemed into this offense and how the passing or rather the route concepts that they prefer for him to run. But I don't know. It's interesting. Any last thoughts on those topics?
Well, I really think that we could probably do a whole episode talking about where does Kenny Galladay fit into the Giants
Yeah, we
offense, because it
should.
is a little hard to see right now, and I think we should do an episode about that because you're kind of mentioning it. You take a look at the way that the Chiefs offense has been constructed the past few years, even the Bills offense, their primary receivers are shifty route runners. They're not big possession guys. You're talking about Tyreek Hill, you're talking about Stephon Diggs, and then you're talking about great tight ends in Dawson Knox and Travis Kelce. They don't really have a big outside, big body WR1 on either of those teams. So it's going to be interesting to see just how, the Bills offensive scheme kind of translates to being the new Giants offensive scheme, because they haven't had that. And same thing with the Chiefs offensive scheme. So I think that's a really interesting point that you made. We should definitely discuss that further. But when it comes to Daniel Jones, I know he likes to throw to those big bodied receivers. So they're going to have to adjust the scheme so that Daniel Jones has more opportunities to take some chances on the outside with Kenny Galladay. But also, he does like to throw short. He's been very comfortable throwing the ball short the past few years in these very conservative offenses. So, really tying everything back together for the whole episode, you're going to see a lot of RPOs and a lot of screen passes, and it should lead to hopefully a much more statistically productive season for Daniel Jones, maybe even the best of his career. I don't know how much that says because he statistically has had a very poor career, but it should be a lot better in 2022.
Yeah, we can hope so, my friends. But if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe below. As always, my friends, really appreciate the love. And if you guys want some Fireside Giants stickers, make sure to hit me up on Instagram at Fireside Giants or Twitter, Alex Wilson ESM. You can see it on the YouTube right above me, Alex Wilson ESM. Want some stickers? I'll send them to you, no problem. As always, hope you guys enjoy the video. I'll catch you guys on the next one.
TVSO.